Welcome csc200 class online for spring 2020, and I'm going to get you started on your first exercise. That's going to involve some queries. It'll be fairly simple, but one thing I wanted to point out first is w3schools.com. They have tutorials for all kinds of languages, and one of them is SQL, and it's more of a resource or reference kind of place to go to. So when you're not sure about the syntax or how things work, you could go here and find something out real quick, and there's examples to go through. We're going to be using the select statement, we're going to be using order by, we're going to be using group by, which is down here. So any of these things, if you ever forget what they are, or you watch me do them in a video and you're not sure, this is a great place to go and check it out. So I'm going to keep that tab open. Also, I have the instructions for your first assignment, which some people have done. Some people have not done this yet. So if you haven't done this, you need to do this as soon as possible so that you can get started with your exercise. Now, this was setting up your database and getting set up in PythonAnywhere. Now, I'm going to go to PythonAnywhere. This is my account, and you can see that's me, home of WCCC. Now, once you indicate me as a teacher, I will be able to see your account. I'll be able to go in and see your account, so you don't have to send me files. Like, just for example, if I go into Homa RCN here, I could go in and see if he made his database directory, and he did. And I could see if he made his databases. I could go into databases, and he made a presidents database, and that's his username, and there is presidents, and obviously that's me. So it's another account I made so I could kind of keep track of myself as a student, so I could see things as you see them, and I could see other students here. Now, if I go check out RM Homa, it's another guy with a name similar to mine, and I go into his files, I'll see that he doesn't have a database directory. He didn't create one called databases. And when I go into his databases, by default, it's still asking for a password. So I'm going to go through that. Even though I have another video where I do that, I'm going to do that just to get you set up, just so I can do this from scratch in here. And if I run into any problems, I run into some problems, and then it'll help us. So first thing you're going to have to do, if you haven't done this yet, is download this file. Now, it's zipped. And you could just download it to your downloads. You could just click on it and download it to your downloads, and then you could double click on it and make sure that you extract it so that you're using just the SQL file. So make sure it's unzipped. You're not going to upload the zip file. So that's all you have to do first, and it's in my downloads. I know that it's there. So I'm going to go to PythonAnywhere, and before I mess around in here, I'm going to go back to Files, and I'm going to create a directory, and remember I said to call it Databases. And if you're not sure, I have this handout where I tell you to do that. Create a directory named databases and then upload the file into there. So you're going to do that first. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm just going over this again. So I'm going to make a new directory because I don't have one here. There's Python stuff here, but there's not that. So I'm going to hit new directory. And now I have a database directory, and it's empty. And it's saying upload file. And this is where I want to upload from my downloads the one that I just downloaded, which is presidents.sql. So I'm going to upload that right now. And the reason we're going to upload that, because that has the data that's going to populate our database. Because right now when you just make a database, it's going to be empty. So that has instructions in there, and you could open that up and look at it and see what it is. It's just it just has 44 presidents in there. And then I'm going to go to databases. Now that I have this, and like I said, you could click on this and open it up, and it'll show you all the code. If you want. I'll just hit the back button. I don't need it open right now. And I'm going to go to databases, and I don't have a database, and I told you to make a password of MySQL admin, and then do the same thing down here, MySQL admin. This should be different from your main, and I should be okay. I'm not sure why it's shown pink, but let me do it. 2 password fields didn't match. Well, let me try it again. So that's just my password. I shouldn't need my password. When you go into your database, you shouldn't really need it. But that'll help, but it does try to set them up so they are secure to start, so other people can't go in them. Now, once you're in, it should look like this. And down here, what you're going to do is you're going to create a blank database called presidents. And it's going to be lowercase, so just call it presidents. You don't have to put your username in it. It'll put your username and the $sign automatically in it. So just put presidents and hit create. Don't worry about the MySQL password. You shouldn't need that again if you already just did that, unless it asks you. And that's what you should see. So now I have my default. It creates a default there automatically. And then here's presidents. That's here. Now, what you can do right away, just to save a little time, if you click right on this, it'll take you right in to your shell, or right into your console for your presidents database. So I'm going to click on this. And it's showing up here that it's in presidents. And if you're not sure, first thing you could do is go in here and say show databases and put a semicolon, and notice I'm typing everything in caps that's SQL code. So I'm saying show databases, and I hit enter. And there it's showing me this default information schema, the default, and then there's my presidents. And what you're going to do next, we can select it. It already is selected, but you could select it. You could say select database. This is the only time we use parentheses, but you could put a semicolon there. And it's definitely showing it's selecting that one. So you know that's selected, so there's nothing wrong with doing that. And now what I'm also going to do is just do show tables, just so we know what tables are in there, to make sure they're in there so far. And there's probably going to be none. It says empty set. So we know we're in the database. So if I go back to my instructions here, it has this thing down here. So we already have that. We already have our console. And it says use this database, and it says source. Now, I think we can just use source because we're already using the database. We already selected it. I don't think we have to use it again. So let me just see if I could just use source, and then the source is going to be databases/presidents.sql, because that's our file. That's the one that we uploaded. So let me go in there and do that. So I'm just going to use source, and I'm going to do a space, and I'm going to use databases, because that's our directory that you're in, and then I'll use presidents.sql. And what should happen, and I'll end it with a semicolon, and what should happen is that should write the SQL data in that file. It should write it into our database. It should create a table there because that's what the file says to do. And we'll learn about doing that later, but let's see if this works without using the use part. Okay, and that should be fine. I know there's a bunch of things that came out here. It says table Democrat doesn't exist. That's okay. Let's just show tables again. And I'll use a semicolon. And I'll hit enter. And there's presidents. And that's fine. And one thing too, I'm always writing at the bottom here. If I hit return a whole bunch of times, and I'm going to return all the way, this stuff goes to the top. And then if I do Control L, it'll kind of like erase the blackboard and put me at the top. My other stuff is still going to be there. That's why I hit all those returns, because I didn't want to wipe anything out yet. But I can kind of start it here at the top, so I don't always have to be typing at the bottom. And what I'm going to do next, now that I have my table, is I'm going to show everything in my table. I'm going to say select, and I'm going to use the asterisk, which means all columns. It doesn't mean all records, it means all columns. And I'll say select all, and I'll use from, and I'll say presidents. And notice that I'm using the capital P. This isn't the database, this is the table. And the table starts with a capital P. I tried to set up kind of a system so that the database is lowercase p, and the table is always with a capital P. And you have to remember to put the semicolon. And if you don't, you just have to go back and do it again. If you don't put the semicolon and you hit return, it'll give you a little arrow there, and it's kind of prompting you to put the semicolon, and you could put it in. And then I'll do that. And then here's all my stuff. Now it's a little wider than the screen, so it starts to overlap at the end. And I mentioned that you can make it smaller and run it again. For example, if I do on a Mac, I could do Command minus and make it a lot smaller. And then I could even go up here and copy this. Don't copy the MySQL prompt, just copy the SQL text. And I'm going to do a Command C because I'm on a Mac. And you would use Control C, and I'll go down here and I'll do a Command V, and I'll put my semicolon because I didn't do that the first time. And now you can see it all fits in a little bit better. And that's okay right now. I don't have to do a whole lot with that. We're going to look at little parts of it right now. So what I'll do is I'll put it back at Command 0 so everything is normal size, and I'll even do the thing where I put in all the returns, and I'll do Control L. So I'm actually ready to do some more right now. So that's just making sure that everything is displaying. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break here, since I reviewed some of the early steps that I even have in another video. But I did that just for people who didn't do this yet. And then we're going to run some queries here. So I'm going to do that in part 2.